Hello everyone, this is the key activity part 2, and we're going to talk about does the mind exist apart from the brain. We now recognize the first thing that we'll talk about mind and brain being the same thing. It's Paulina, Carla, and Sara.
My team and I have the position that mind and brain are both different things, but they can depend on each other. Firstly, in order to understand the main topic for the debate, we would like to explain some basic concepts, such as what's our brain. This is commonly defined as a physical organ that controls all functions of the body, interprets information from the outside world, and embodies the essence of the mind. Moreover, we would like to talk about the concept which refers to the part of the person that thinks, reasons, feels, understands, and remembers. And it can be divided in 3 different levels, which are the conscious, which refers to our immediate awareness and what we're experiencing from our senses, and leads us to analyze information and then make decisions based on it. The subconscious is the part of the consciousness that is not currently in focal awareness, and we usually refer to as memories. And the unconscious mind is a process that happens automatically. It occurs underneath the conscious awareness and stores all repressed thoughts and feelings. Now, we would like to ask you the next question. What is consciousness?
We can define consciousness as awareness of internal and external existence, which is a brain process. We can explain this with the role of energy of our body, and energy leads us to a physical process. Emotions are a big part of the brain too. These are often related to a soul, or in fewer words, the mind. Anyways, there are certain parts of the brain from them as well as some processes which made us have feelings and emotions. The parts we mentioned before are the amygdala, the insula, or the insular cortex, and a structure in the midbrain called the gray materia, which caused all these emotions and feelings. Furthermore, we are able to see that this problem does not just exist in the philosophy part, but science has also talked about this. A professor and neuroscientist in the Warwick-Rhodes University, in the essay title on the relationship between the mind and brain, a neuroscience perspective, has explained that the brain is made by neurons and neurotransmitters, which allow us to feel, experience, understand, and remember.
He also explains that the relationship between mind and matter, which is none, and says never matter, no mind, which we may interpret as if there's no brain, mind would not exist. We can clearly see this with a machine. Suppose that the brain is a hardware, and the software is the mind. Software is non-existent without the hardware, because it is part of the machine. They would work together, and one is part from the other one. There are a lot of forms to see how the mind and the brain interact. Like when we are watching a sad movie, we get sad, even though we know that the characters are not real. This relationship is based on how the nervous system influences the mind, and the mind influences the nervous system. So there's a cause and an effect. The most moderated explanation for this is this thing called epiphenomenalism, that explains how the mind is an epiphenomenon, which is a subproduct of the nervous system. With this, we can again say that the mind is part of the brain and body. But given how they work and the information they work with, they codependent on each other. So if there's no brain, there will not be mind. And if there's no mind, there will not be anything that the brain can interact with.
Now we recognize the next team, which is Francisco Rivera, Emiliano Caloca, and Manuel Recio, that will talk about mind and brain being separated.
Okay, there are some things we didn't understand, but let's talk about that later. We think the opposite. We think that the mind and the brain are the same thing. Let me start by telling you what I found after reading a little bit of a book called You're Not Your Mind. This book is by Rebecca Gladding. I could realize that basically the mind is one of the abstract names we give to the function of the brain. For example, emotions. Emotions are created by the brain, right? And by the function of the brain itself. And the same happens with the mind. According to the Perspect Psychology Association, the mind is the same as the brain, but we give it another name that makes it something abstract. We make this because we as humans cannot understand the complexity of the brain. Same happens with feelings and thoughts and many more. But all of them are functions of the brain. So basically, the mind and the brain are the same. We just give them another name so we can understand something that we cannot see, something that it's not tangible, that one thing tangible is the brain, and we give it an abstract name to this that we call mind.
Well, thank you, Emiliano, for the space. And partners, I would continue to support our position against the division of brain and mind by quoting William B. Salt II. The brain is the central processing unit of the body and plays a key role in translating the content of the mind. Your thoughts, feelings, attitudes, beliefs, memories, and imagination into complex patterns of nerve cell firing and chemical release. So, what do I mean by this? The mind is related to the brain. These two terms are often used interchangeably. The brain is considered a physical thing, and the mind is considered a mental thing. The brain is composed of nerve cells and can be touched, while the mind cannot be touched. Now, my partner Manuel Recio will continue supporting our position with more of his arguments and proofs.
Thank you, Fran. Well, we believe that the mind and the brain are the same thing. We as humans have different organs in our body, and they all have the function of controlling our body. The brain has the function of sending the most important instructions to all the other organs of our body, and we believe that the mind is part of the instructions that the brain sends, being both the same thing. By this, we mean that the mind is what makes you aware of things, and that is why throughout your life, you acquire knowledge and become more and more capable of thinking things. But this is through the brain, since without the brain, the mind could not exist. For us, this is a very logical point of view, since our brain gives life to consciousness, and although the brain may be something physical and consciousness not, it does not mean that they are different things. These are our position as a team, and we are ready to continue with the debate.
Thank you for the opportunity for me to open this debate. I would like to answer your question of consciousness. When the brain dies, the mind and consciousness of the person to whom the brain belongs no longer exists. In other words, without the brain, there would be no consciousness. So could you please tell me where is the union of this consciousness and brain thing?
Yeah, like for example, based on your research, when you die, well, for us, when you die, it is said that to transfer someone's mind, it's not possible to do it without a brain. So first you need to build a brain and then connect all the neurons and everything. And the brain needs to be exactly the same as the person who is going to be the mind transferred to. Otherwise, it wouldn't work.
But here, what it's transferred is the brain. You cannot say that the mind will be transferred. So we cannot assume that, right? So if we see what it's tangible, you can transfer a brain to another person, or you can make something with that brain, but you cannot assume that the mind will be there. So that's why we think there are two separate things, not one.
But what will the brain be without the mind? It's just an organ, but how does it work?
The brain, as you said, is an organ that gives life to this mind, and I think mind goes far beyond than science, but it still can be touched and proved that it's together. You know, that it's just one thing.
Yes, I support Fran ideas because I think that the mind the consciousness depends totally on the brain, as all the other organs that we have. The brain is an organ that gets how to say, practice, and like it gets stronger when you learn things. Maybe learning and consciousness, it's not the same, but I think that that's where they are separated. Yeah.
But I would like to add to that given my information, the mind is an epiphenomenon, which is, it means that the mind is as a product of the brain. So the brain creates the mind. So they are both together. And if there is no brain, the mind can't work. But also, if there's no mind, the brain can't do anything.
Yeah, and we can agree that they are related. Yeah, that's true. Without a mind, without a brain, there cannot be that thing that we call mind, right? But they're related doesn't mean that they're the same. As I said, we give it an abstract name to things like feelings, but feelings are just a stimulus of the brain, and the mind too, right? So the mind, it's the same. It's the work of the brain, but we cannot say they are the same thing, right? I don't know if you understand this part, but we agreed that it's that they are related to the point that without one, the other one doesn't exist. But we cannot say they're the same. Okay.
Supporting the sorry Sarah for interrupting. Supporting the idea of my partner is that I don't know if you have seen criminal videos in the judgment or something like that. When they say that the person wasn't conscious and couldn't act in another way or something like that. So here's the clear example that mind and brain are separate things. That the brain gives birth to this consciousness, but if the person doesn't have this consciousness, where is the mind?
Well, I think that you're referring mind as in a spiritual thing and brain as a physical one. But as we've mentioned in our past tour, the brain has these neurotransmitters and processes that makes us have emotions, consciousness. And we also mentioned before that all the spiritual things come with energy, and energy is part from a physical thing. So that's why we think it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think that Fran doesn't mean like a spiritual thing. He means something abstract, something we cannot see. And I will give you an example. You say that they are the same, but they're not, because we can see it in animals. What makes us human different than animals is that we have consciousness, right? Dogs and cats and other animals doesn't have consciousness, and they still have a brain, right? So they don't know what they're doing. If we put it like the how it's studied, they don't know. They don't have consciousness of what's really happening, but they still have a brain. They react, they move, and they because they have a brain, but they don't have a mind like humans.
Yeah, that's right. But we've also mentioned before that, well, we didn't, but the human brain is more developed than animal brains. So we have more areas in the brain that work for this. For example, the amygdala that works for emotions and feelings, and the cortex.
Okay, but if we talk about how developed our brain is, we have animals like dolphins that they have more developed brains than us, right? So I don't think it's thing of complexity of the brain. It's a thing of what makes us humans. What makes us humans are its consciousness, because even though these animals have we could say better brains than us, they still they aren't conscious. So there's where I say that the mind and the brain are different things, because doesn't matter how developed the brain is, they still don't have a mind.
Yes, I think that the point of view of Kaloka is a very good example of why the brain and the mind are different. We can see it, as he said, in the animals. We as humans are more developed, and we have the possibility and like the capacity of learning new things and feeling. So I think that that's why the brain and the mind are different things, are not the same.
Yeah, but a good example to show they are together is like you can do it with your finger, point to your brain, now point to your mind. For me, it's the same. What do you think?
I supporting that idea. Like, we don't know exactly where is the mind and how it works, but we know that the brain is the one that is sending this like this information to react to everything that we are thinking. And there is this thing that which says that the relationship between the mind and the brain is based on the nervous system. So how can they be separated if they work completely together?
Okay, so just let me ask something. When you said point to your mind, okay, I related and I would do this, right? But it's the same as I tell you point to your feelings. It's something abstract. It's not a thing. And it's like if I told you point to love, you would point to your heart, because we relate them, because we as humans relate something abstract with something tangible, right? So it's the same. If I it's like that. If I tell you point to your feelings, where would you point? It's the same. So I don't think you could say point to your mind and you actually can point to something. You can point to what we as humans have related that thought.
And supporting to my partner's comment and Sarah's example of this organ that you talked about, the feelings, as you said, so it depends of this organ to work, but it's a different thing and it's something abstract, as my partner said. It's like brain is the one. It's like the leader. Is the one that says to my arm, move and do this. But consciousness is not something that can do that. Also, that work that brain does. Do you understand?
Yeah, we do understand that thing, but I would like to ask you if you think that if we die and our brain dies, what do you think that happens to the mind? Does it die or does it go away?
Let me answer it. We think that as any other organ in your body, as any other thing that happens without your brain, it won't work. So yeah, we think that they are related, and as we said at the beginning, without one, the other one cannot work, but they're not the same. So it's like if you ask me what happens if your heart heart stopped beating, would you still have feelings? Of course not. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be alive. It's the same.
And complementing this point of my partner, I don't know if you remember the thing that I said at the beginning of the brain dies and consciousness, the mind is the consciousness. And when you die, everything with you that you have dies. I know we are energy, but does it mean that energy can transfer consciousness? I don't think so. So when the brain dies, consciousness goes with it, you know? Maybe our physical parts and all that stuff goes with the energy, goes with the flow, but this part of consciousness doesn't.
So I think we both believe that both mind and brain work together and they need each other. And I believe that we agree that they are not necessarily the same thing. I believe that they are different things, but they need each other. If there is no brain, there's no mind. And if there's no mind, there's no brain. So I believe that we can say that they, well, yes, that they work together, but they are different things.
We agree that the brain and the mind needs to work together for us to be humans.
Thank you, Manuel, and thank you, everyone. We are glad for finishing this debate, and even though this is a really complex theme, we are glad that we all agree in the same conclusion. Thank you.